Welcome. In this tutorial we're going to talk about image editing. Particularly we're going to edit previously existing photographs. The tool we're going to use is freely available on the web and it's called Pixlr, Pixlr.com. So here we are at Pixlr.com's homepage, and once you arrive here, what you want to do, there's all sorts of information about Pixlr. To open the editor itself so we can edit photos, click on the Pixlr editor link. Now it'll start off by asking you what kind of image you want to create, and today we're going to start off by opening a previously existing image. So I'm going to click the Open Image from Computer option, and here I am on the desktop and I have a JPEG image here waiting for me, so I'm going to click on this JPEG and open it up. Now what we've done is we've opened up an image file into our workspace. I have this pointer arrow here that lets me grab onto the image and move images around on the workspace. In a little bit we'll have multiple images opened, and so you can start to utilize this workspace in a meaningful way that works for you once you open up a number of documents in that workspace. Now, once you're in the editor itself, if you want to open up subsequent images, just like in most programs, you can open image, open a URL from an image library. Pixlr does give you the option to save images with their service, so you can go from one of their libraries. Also notice you have your save, print, close, etc. Now if you sign up for Pixlr, you get some extra bonuses, such as the capability to store your images on their server, but you don't have to sign in or sign up just to use the editor itself. So we have this image opened up from our desktop. If you look down here at the bottom of the image, it tells us how big this image actually is, and this is 2,560 pixels by 1,920 pixels. So it's a rather large image, and the first thing we're going to talk about today is making this image smaller. But before we make the images smaller, let's talk about the tools actually. Here's the toolbar menu, and this is similar to other image editing programs, so if you've worked with Photoshop before, this layout is familiar to you. Now here, this arrow tool is what we call the move tool, and the move tool enables us to move and elements around within a specific image. We'll use that. This tool here is the crop tool, and this here is the marquee tool, and what the marquee tool enables us to do is to select an area of an image. There are more tools here: lasso, magic wand, paintbrushes, and paint buckets that fill colors. We'll talk more about these a little later. There is one tool to note when working with photos. This is the red eye reduction tool, and if you get a photo with a red eye, you can click on this and it gives you a little crosshairs that you can put just over the top of the eye and kind of click on it, and it dulls that red down, which can be useful if you really like the picture, but it has the red eye from a flash. Now the first objective here in resizing this image is that we have 2500 by 1900, and we'd like to bring this photo down. Let's say that we're going to embed it into a web page, and that the size that we actually need is more like 400 by 300 pixels. The quickest way to do that is to go up to Image menu, and when that drops down, you have the capability to change the canvas size, which means that the size of your workplace will shrink, but the picture will not. If you actually want to shrink the image, then you choose image size. You also have the option to rotate the canvas, and if you do these, it'll flip your image around for you. You can flip it horizontally or vertically, so those are some interesting effects. But let's shrink the size. When I click change image size, then it asks me to give it the new width and height that I'm looking for. And let's start with a width of 400, and if I do 400, it automatically enters in 300 pixels there for me. Now the reason that is I have constrained property or proportions checked, which means that if I enter in a width or height, it will automatically deduce what the proportion for the other, whether it's width or height, and fill that in for me, which is useful, especially if you're looking just to shrink the picture as a whole and not do any special cropping. So let's shrink this down to 400 by 300 pixels. I'll click OK, and it shrinks right down. And I know that it's 400 by 300 pixels by looking down here at the bottom of my image palette, and it tells me 400 by 300 pixels. Now this is very small, and if we look over here into our navigator window on the right side of the screen, it tells us that we're actually at 30% the original size. There's a slider here, so I can slide it right to 100, and this is the full-size image. When I'm doing fine detail work, I can zoom in even farther, and that way if I wanted to work on just individual pixels of an image with a paintbrush or a fill tool or a gradient, I could do it while it was zoomed in and then zoom back out. Now I can also type in the percentage that I'm looking for. I'll just leave it at 100. Now I can grab a hold of the edge of the canvas and shrink it so it's more the size of the image that I'm looking for. And now we have imported our image and resized it to 400 by 300 pixels. That's useful if the image is exactly the size that you're looking for. But let's say that what we were actually looking for was an image that was 400 by 250 pixels. If I had tried to shrink it down using the constrained proportions option within the resize image option, or the image size option, I couldn't have done it. It would have morphed the picture by trying to make it 400 by 250 pixels. What we have to do to get this off size from its original aspect ratio is to do some cropping. So I can click on the crop tool here, and now I get this little crosshair, and I can drag it. Now the way that the crop tool works is you select an area by holding down the mouse and dragging it, and the area that you select is the area that you're going to keep, and whatever's not in the area of the selection tool will get cropped off. So this little bit here at the bottom is going to get cropped off. Now it gives me this grid and it tells me this is what's going to remain, and if I click on it, then it just crops that off. And when I look now, I now have an image that's 400 by 285 pixels. Now I can continue to use the crop tool to crop down. Once again, and if you get this by accident, you can just say cancel. Apply the changes, no. When I pull the crop tool, notice over in the navigator that you can see the width and the height change, so you can almost deduce a width and height there by using the crop tool. I'm going to not apply the changes. Another way to do this is to create a new file. So what I want to do is I want to create a mask that's 400 by 250 pixels that I'm then going to paste this image into. So the first thing I'm going to do is select the marquee tool. That enables me to select this whole area here. And now I can go to edit and copy, just like I do text. And now I have that copied onto my clipboard. Next I can go into File and I create a new image. And when I do that, every time I do a new image, it asks me if I want to name it. it looks the last thing that I copied on the clipboard, and then it asks me if that's the size that I want. And I do want the width to be 400, but this time I'm going to make the height 250, which is that exact size that I was looking for, 400 by 250, and I'm going to say OK. And it opens up a new canvas for me here. So here's the canvas with my image that's a little too large. Here's my 400 by 250 canvas that I like. And now I'm going to copy and click over here and paste. Now I've pasted it, and note that my image is 200 by, 400 by 250 pixels. One nice thing when you copy in something that's larger than the canvas size itself, you can then grab the move tool, which is this arrow, and move it around. Because our original image was a little taller than this new canvas, I have a little bit of playroom to decide exactly where I'd like to do that. Now, I can move that with the move arrow, and I can also use the arrow keys on my keyboard to move it 1 pixel at a time. And I think I'll leave it just like that. One thing to note when saving images is that you've imported your original image here, and we've started editing on it. We shrank it, we cut it, we cropped it. If you do click save on this image, it will overwrite your original image. So it's a pretty critical thing to understand, that if you edit your original image, you might lose that if you don't have another copy somewhere. So it's always smart when editing an image to use a copy of your original to do the editing with. That way if you save it, you don't save over your original. Or you can do a copy and paste like this, and that way when I close this image, it asks me if I want to save it, and I say no. My original image is not touched, and I have this new sized image, which then I can work with. So now I have my image that's resized to 400 by 250. We've cropped it, we've resized it, copied and pasted to a new canvas. The next step we'll look at is the adjustment capabilities. Now, when this application is talking about adjustment, it's talking particularly about color. Now, for example, I can select the brightness and contrast menu, and I'll scoot this over. I can change brightness up and down using the slider, or once again using the numbers. I can change contrast, and by doing this I can get subtle various effects. And note that I can do that with hue and saturation, colors, the RGB palette, levels of light, curves, exposure. Down here are some preset color adjustments, some pretty popular ones such as sepia, which has that old time feel. Now when you apply something like a sepia filter, and if you decide you don't want it, you can always take one step back by clicking undo. So the undo feature is very handy. If I look at more adjustments, the one that's probably most popular folks are looking for is desaturate, which now makes it black and white. So I've desaturated it to black and white, and let's say now I can change the levels a bit. If I grab on one of these sliders, I can make it a little darker and kind of start to change the effect of the black and white image. I'm going to cancel that, and if I click undo, it'll take me back to my color image. So adjustments allow you a level of editing your color and the balances of the color.